Hey everybody, welcome to DBS Films Podcast. My name is Kellen. With me as always is my brother Brennan. Together we make movies with DBS Films. Today's episode we're going into part 2 of what you need to do to prepare for filming your indie movie, because we are about to film our 14th indie film. It's about Bigfoot. So we just got done with the production meeting. We're basically going to give you guys insights. In the first episode, we talked about what you should really look for when working with the actors and talent when it comes to pre-production. There's honestly a lot. We have full episodes on pre-production that you can take a look at, but we basically wanted to highlight two major ones. One is working with the actors and the talent, which is what we mentioned from before, getting them on the same page for the script so you can save 15, 20, 30, 40, even hours and hours on set because you guys are on the same page going into it. This episode, we're going to go ahead and talk more about the schedule. But as always, be sure to take a look at our Discord channel online because we make movies for our fans, with our fans. So if you ever want to be part of the process, part of the movie making fun, well, just join the Discord and you can be on set with us like the 11 plus people we are bringing out next week. So, really, as I mentioned, this is going to be all about that schedule. I think the two things that we've done, as we mentioned, the biggest difference has been the pre-production increase that we did, working with the actors and everything that we're talking about from the beginning. But I think the second thing that we've gotten very, very good at, and again, if you're a first-time indie filmmaker out here, there's really not much you can do other than just film and get this experience, but understanding what it takes to make a movie and also understanding what we like to refer to as the bell curve of the production. So, I think the first thing I want to talk about is just how critical a schedule is, because you can literally create an impossible schedule. And I think with all of the information that I have from different indie filmmakers out there, podcasts, things like that, I would say 80 to 90% of the time they mentioned they had to do pickups. And a pickup is when you have to basically shoot something else because you ran out of time. And pickups are a very, very dirty word in the DBS culture because that means a lot more money, a lot more issues, a lot more frustrations, delays. So do you want to talk about, I think the first thing is how you can create an impossible schedule and you're basically doomed from failure from the beginning.
Yeah, I think that the first 8 movies, we really messed our schedules up and we really set ourselves up for failure. And it's actually a miracle they were able to get all these movies done. But it's good because now I look back and I'm like, well, we're not making Whitlow House. And that was a very difficult movie. We're not making Forest of Death, and that's not a very good movie. And honestly, Forest of Death, the only reason we got that one done is because we made a very good schedule for that one. But to give you a recap of what we used to do, we start off with the easy stuff, which is what you want to do. But we would end with the hardest scenes. And I'll tell you what, on day 6, day 7, it's very difficult to think straight. You kind of have this brain fog. You're very tired. You're physically tired. You're mentally tired. And your body is literally, your brain is basically saying, just give up, do what you can to just get this shot. And then you can go to sleep. You take a shower, you go to sleep. And it's constantly telling you that. And obviously that is not what you want to hear because you're not going to get the best product possible. And if you're saving your really hard stuff, your climax to the end, it's even harder. And we did that with pretty much all our movies. Morgan Estate, we were doing the climax when the actor's Uber was arriving. Devil in the Room was a similar situation. We saved it to the end, and both those movies suffer from, they needed a lot of pickups in both those movies to get that ending to where it needed to go. But it's just difficult. It's just, and it's also adds to your tension and your stress level because as you're going through the movie, you're always behind. We're never on schedule. You might be on schedule for like the first 3 scenes and then that's it. So as you're going through this movie, you still have the climax and you probably have the intro scene at the end of the script or at the end of the schedule. And you're already like, oh, we're behind. We're way behind. We're way behind. We're way behind. And we still have these 2 massive scenes to do. You're very stressed with what we do now. Put all the hard stuff first. We have one day, with easy stuff. And then the rest of the movie, or we have one day with the easy stuff, which is a warm up. It's just general dialogue stuff. We put the climax and the intro, and then everything from there, we kind of go downhill. And then the last day is just for pickups or inserts, or anything that we need to just clean the movie up a little bit. And once you're done with that intro and climax, I go to bed and I'm just like, yes, we have a very good shot of making this movie and making a good movie because the hardest stuff is done. And then God forbid something happens with the climax intro, you still have 3 to 4 days to kind of, fix things up and do, different shots and scenes to fix the issues. If you do the climax on the final day and you don't get what you need, you're screwed. You have to get everyone back. So I think that's definitely a much easier process. Horror in the Forest was a very easy movie as far as that schedule, with A Cold Grave, which is easy shoot in general, but we did it, we properly scheduled it. And then this one, we're really going to push to have the heavier stuff, the harder scenes done in the middle of the week, so that really Saturday, the final day that we have, is just going to be me and Andrew, running through the woods, just trying to get as much coverage and footage as possible that's not special effects heavy. We're probably going to do like his final monologue in there, which isn't very difficult to do. It's an emotional scene for him, but for me to shoot, I just sit there. So, once again, you want to kind of go up the hill and then get all the hard stuff done first. And then you just easy sailing, smooth sailing all the way down for the rest of the shoot.
Yeah, so I think it's like a front-loaded bell curve. We'll actually create a graph of this one day when we're doing DBS film school. But I mean, that's really the case, is you want to take those big, big, big important scenes. Most important scene you got is your intro and your climax. Intro is if they're going to turn the movie off or not, which is very important to you. And then climax is that last taste that you leave in them just lingering on. And if it's not very satisfying, well, you're going to definitely hear from them in a review, because that's when the movie's over and they're going to go back and do it. So those are the two most important things. I think one of the bigger ones is give yourself some free days, kind of give yourself a pickup day almost that we kind of have. And again, we do live editing on set as well. So that's one of the bigger ones that we always recommend if you can have someone looking through these things, because I can only imagine, again, being an indie filmmaker, being completely blind, which is what we did for the few first ones, you get surprises that you could have easily fixed. So, to give you guys an idea, we have that first day is usually just very, very little dialogue. I would say don't jump directly into those intros and climax, because you do want to kind of get them warmed up. That's kind of something we see. You kind of get the team on like a good environment. You get, the endorphins going and everything, and you kind of start building momentum. And then you kind of hit those intro scenes and that climax scene very, very, very intense, as you said. And from there, it's easy to just kind of, pull it back and go down there, because again, you are going to run into fatigue. You are going to run into, tired and stressed out actors. And there's just a lot of times, it's emotionally draining. So if you are waiting towards the end, applying that stress and that pressure, it is it. But I think the number one cardinal rule that I think I would give any indie filmmaker out there, depending on how many days you have, if you have like 7 days, I'd give yourself 2 extra days of just free space. I've always heard it there. I've always seen so many different extra pickups, but I think the best thing you can do is give yourself just an additional buffer day to go back and film some more, because more often than not, you are vastly underestimating how long it takes to make a movie, especially if you've never done it before. Do you think that's pretty good cardinal advice to any first-time filmmaker out there?
Yeah, and I think one of the most valuable skill sets that I own is just understanding how long a shot takes. It's very difficult to know how to do that. It's almost impossible to schedule properly. If you don't know, if you've never been on set, or, how long it actually does to take a shot. Cause there's some that are just like interview scenes can be done very, very quickly. So you can knock out 3 pages of dialogue in an hour, with multiple takes and the coverage that you need. And then there's some scenes that are very difficult. Like if you watch Forest of Death, which you should, because it's free on Tubi, the end climax scene where Chloe gets into the house was very, very difficult. That probably took the whole night, but that was a climax scene, so we knew we were going to do it. But like, it is a very technical shot. There's multiple cuts, there's multiple inserts, there's special effects, all that stuff, racks up. So you're looking at a scene, that climax maybe was 2 to 3 minutes in film time, and it took probably 1-2 nights to really get it to where it needed to go. But then you have like just the Roger scene, and like the Roger fire pit scene took maybe 2 to 3 hours, and that's about 3 or 4 pages of dialogue. So you have something that takes the same amount of screen time. One takes 2 hours, one takes 2 days. And you have to know that. You have to understand the only way to do that is through experience, which is why we say make a lot of movies, because you can start to get good at this stuff. I'm very good now understanding how long things take, but it's also because I shoot the movies as well. So it's like, if I'm starting to fall behind, I just like, all right, dude, like to myself, I'm like, we got to pick this up. Um, so but working with a DP before when we were falling behind, it can be a struggle because they always want their shots. We were always building rigs and doing a whole bunch of other stuff. And at some point you got to say, all right, this lighting we're going to do minimalistic lighting. We're going to just put it on a shoulder rig and we're going to, go guerrilla style filmmaking. And we're just going to get this because we need to move on to something else. And if you're working with a DP to communicate that, both of you guys are on the same page, can be a little bit difficult. Which is why, if you can shoot your stuff, do it, because number one, you learn how to do this stuff, but two, every time, the more people you have on set, the longer getting someone to go in the right place can take 3 to 5 minutes. And then that person takes another 3 to 5 minutes and kind of daisy chains its way down, which we suffer from a lot in the first couple of movies. Just like, to get everyone in the same place at the right time takes a lot of skill and effort. So, I'm going on a tangent here, but just keep your cast and your crew small and you'll actually save a lot of time and it'll be easier to schedule things. The bigger the production, the harder it is to get everyone on the same page to do the same thing and to do it quick. So that's just where we're at right now. We're very lean, but we're also very fast, which allows us to essentially shoot an hour and 20-minute movie in 7 days, which I don't know anyone else that's really doing this on a consistent basis. That's not producing like cell phone found footage stuff. Like, all our stuff is pretty cinematic, which I think is a testament to our team and testament to our pre-production stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that really is, you see it in the development of DBS and how we're going. But I mean, like, it was laughably bad how terrible we were scheduling in the first 8. But again, we didn't know. So I mean, I'm like, indie filmmakers out there, you're gonna run into this. But I mean, like, I remember there was multiple times when I was telling people who let us use their house for the invited, they were like, yeah, we'll be out by midnight. And then it was like 4 a.m. and my friend's mom was like, what is happening here? Why are you people still here? I was told midnight. Another one that was my favorite was, we did pickups for the intro for the Morgan estate. We actually had to reshoot and get the location again. And I had work the next day and I was like, hey, Brendan, like, what time would be? Oh, we're out by midnight. No worries. I left from that location to go to work. I did not go back to my house. So basically I got back at 7 and you guys were still filming until like 2 for like a very short period. And again, that is just something that I think is going to happen to a lot of filmmakers out there. You're going to run into the scheduling issues that you have. I think a big one is, again, you are in charge of that schedule and you need to hold to it. And you need to make sure the entire crew, if you're not filming it, you need to make sure the DP understands, hey, we have to go ahead and do this. I think another very important thing with scheduling, the way we kind of break it down is you have shots each day. We kind of give the scenes, fun little names that we can have a shot list on so everyone can kind of see that schedule and you can know it. But I think the big thing I want to talk about is, once you have a schedule, another thing, not only do you know how quick it is to film it, you also have contingency plans that are building. What scenes can I knock out? Can I get B-roll? Okay, I didn't get the B-roll, or we didn't have this scene. What can we get? What do we need to get in case we need to pick stuff up? It allows you to think on your toes. And I mean, even though we are nailing the schedule, things come up, things happen where either we don't have the prop there, or we need to get something, or we need to move them around. But that schedule needs to be flexible too. So you want to talk about how, once you have a schedule, once you have a mindset, it's very easy for you to say, okay, we can move this scene here, but let's knock this scene out here. And there's be a lot of times when we're on set where it'll be like, hey, we're just going to go knock out this scene because something came up.
Yeah, and if you see a DBS schedule, it's actually pretty funny because the first 3 days are like stacked with like pretty much the entire movie, and then the last like 4 days, there's really nothing on there other than like critical scenes as far as like the actors that are going to come in that day. And I always give it to the actors, and they're like, wow, this looks pretty easy. Like, there's 4 days or there's nothing there. And it's just, I do that on purpose because I know when we start shooting, you'll never get through the whole day worth of stuff. And I actually think it's not good. If you complete all the stuff that you wanted to do for the day, I don't think that's a good thing. I always put way too much there because you want to always end and just have leftover stuff. If you give yourself a deadline, you go through it, you can never add scenes to the day because the actors are constantly looking at that schedule and they're like, all right, if I get done with this, we're done and I'm going to bed. If you try and add a scene to that and be like, hey guys, like, all right, I know we completed today's tasks and our today's scenes, but let's add some more to it. They're not going to like that. They do not like that at all. So what do? I just put a ton of stuff on there that I already know isn't going to be able to go through it. But, we try and do as much as we possibly can. And then I just start shifting and, we go all the way down to that last day, and the last day is the pickup day. But, it does, I'm always confident, and they were like, well, are we behind? I'm like, no, we're right on schedule, because I understand, like, usually the smaller stuff is easy. I can crank out a lot of that stuff. But you do want to kind of keep a little bit of urgency on set. I always want to keep them on their toes and just make sure that they have that sense of urgency. You always, as a director, have to be pushing them forward. They're not going to move forward. If you take a second to sit down and relax, everybody's going to relax. So you have to really keep the actors pushing forward, the schedule pushing forward, the crew pushing forward. Because if you give them an inch, they'll take a foot of rope. Like, it's just, and it gets bad. Like, all that stuff can really spiral out of control. 20-minute lunch could take 2 hours very quickly. So you have to be the one forcing it. And it's difficult because you can be very tired mentally and physically. And you just be like, hey, I need to take like an hour break. Well, that hour break to get everyone stopped and back up again could take 2 to 3 hours. So I do always want to have a sense of urgency. It's controlled chaos on set, but I like to have just a little bit of pressure on them because it keeps everybody sharp and it keeps the adrenaline up a little bit and it keeps everything moving. If you start to get complacent, if you get complacent, if your actors get complacent, if your crew gets complacent, you're going to fall behind.
Yeah, and I think that's a great pivot. And the rest of the episode, we'll kind of talk about that tempo. I think the first thing I want to talk about is, just the tempo itself and how it does exist. And I think the biggest thing as a director and just someone who's, in filmmaking is understanding that tempo, understanding the motivation and the enthusiasm of the entire team. As we mentioned, the more people you add, the more things can go wrong. So, keep it lean and mean is the best way to go, because then you can kind of have the more control over more variables. But you will see as the, movies progress, especially our new actors, they'll kind of be a little bit shy. They'll come out of their shell. They'll get really excited, and then you'll kind of start getting burnt out, and then you'll get tired, and then you kind of fall off of a cliff. And we've seen it dramatically in the first, movies that we were making, because again, we screwed the schedule up and the tempo up. But it's really all about, I think, having that clarity that you mentioned. That's why we stack those first days so people understand. I mean, we just got off a production meeting. The first thing you started with is, this is going to be a marathon. This is going to be really tough. This is going to be hard. You need to set that tone right away, because it is true. Making a movie is not easy. You need to get them understanding this. And again, you have to set it from there and then, build to it more. But I think the biggest thing is, as a first time indie filmmaker, if you're not, like you're saying, leading that charge, you're just going to run into a whole bunch of issues, because people are going to try and pull back. They're going to try and kick the can as much as you can. And you got to fight for all of that there. But I think one of the best things you can do for tempo is that clarity that I was talking about. So, hey, this is going to be hard. Hey, we got a lot of scenes here. I think one of my coolest things is when we do have the shot list and people get excited to basically check it off, you can really you can make your schedule a very positive thing that gets people motivated. And that same schedule could also turn into something terribly nightmarish that is going to just demotivate anyone. So you want to kind of talk about how, including the entire team in this tempo, letting them know, one, it cuts down on little things. One little tidbit: do not set time for lunch. Just have them get food whenever. That is the biggest, that is cutting the production down and then starting back up, which is insane. So never do that. But you want to kind of talk about managing that tempo and how having the actors on board, I think the shot list was something that we started doing with The Devil in the Room. Really, I mean, we had like shot lists, but like actually having a board that had a list of the scenes that we had, I think started in Devil in the Room. And then from there, we always have a little list. It's just a little white erase board that basically says, these are all of the scenes that we have, and we just make our way through it. And the amount of times I see actors go up to that shot list and mentally check in of how much their day has to go really sets the tone for the rest of it. I think it's a huge little tip to have.
Yeah, I mean, I always go through the set and I always try and remember what actors ask me constantly, because you're on an indie set. My time's limited. I'm trying to figure out, how to block a scene, how to shoot the scene, how to light the scene, what kind of performances I'm looking for. How can we make this the best scene possible? And anytime someone comes and asks me a question, excuse me, anytime someone comes and asks me a question, it kind of pulls me out of that moment. And obviously the actors are first. I want to make sure we're clear on everything. Their questions are priority, but a lot of them were repeating. And one of the biggest ones was, what are we doing next? What's next? What's next? What's next? Just get a whiteboard and put the day scenes on there. And like Kel said, it gives them a little bit of a motivation to cross it off. It becomes like a team building thing. I give actors, like, today it's your day to cross off the board, and they love it. But it also cuts down on questions. And I think the questions are wardrobe related and, what are we doing next? Scheduling related. And both those two things can be fixed in pre-production or on set. And I think that that's just a big thing. You really want to be as clear and on the same page with your actors at all times. Everybody should know exactly what's going on now, or they should know exactly what we just did, what the next scene is, and then what the next scene after that is, because they have to go and have to, look at their script and look at their lines and understand what's going to happen next and put themselves in a position to succeed. And that little $5 whiteboard, man, it works every single time. It's really one of the better investments that we have. And it's just a really cool thing. Like, yeah, Kel will show it to you. He's holding it up right now. It's just basically a little whiteboard. And that's all you need. And it really helps out production. It cuts down on questions. It keeps everyone on the same page. And it's just, it's a fun little hack that we found. We found some cool stuff as far as just, making our lives easier, but that little $5 board is going to come back tenfold, hundredfold, just to make your life and everyone's on set much easier.
Oh, 100%. So we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up this episode. I think I want to kind of boil it down. We talked about pre-production, just kind of, if you're a first-time indie filmmaker, when it comes to scheduling, I think one of the best things you can do is, we used to do day zeros a lot. Now we've kind of filmed a lot of our scenes, so we have an understanding of these scenes. Basically, a day zero would be, I stand it as an actor and we try and test something. We see how long a special effect is going to be. You just try something there, because the last thing you want to do is find yourself on set realizing you can't do what you want to do. So I think, that's a good one to kind of also get an idea of how much film it'll take to do a scene. But even just dialogue, like if you're a first time indie filmmaker hopping into this, I would for sure practice dialogue, practice similar scenes, so you can get an idea of how long it takes. Because again, you really have no clue. This is not like other creative arts where you can just kind of ease into them with practice and stuff like that. You're basically, every time you're on set, this time is money and you have so much less time. So I'd say practice those scenes what you can. Always give yourself more time than you really think you do need, because I guarantee you will need it. And again, just think of contingencies. One of the reasons why we did Murder House the way we did it is the whole, like, 25% of the movie is me in a van, which means we can shoot it at any point in time. So you can also be very strategic with, what scenes do I have these limited resources for, and what scenes do I have open-ended resources. One of the actors is a really good friend. They can come back at any point in time. I have this location. It doesn't matter if I need to come back there, versus this person's flying out for this and we're paying for this location. Those are two completely different variables when it comes to how serious it is to kind of planning that one. But basically, have your scheduled iron out, know it like the back of your hand, front load it, make it easier, and again, do as much actual filming and pre-production as you can. What would you say, again, this first time filmmaker, talking to Brendan before he goes into Gone, and you're like, oh, Child of Summer, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's just scheduling. Your pre-production and scheduling is going to be your biggest thing. You really want to, any and all issues you really want to solve before you get on set, because that 1 week goes by so fast and you're literally in a haze, and it's very hard to, like, I can't even describe it unless you do it. Like, it's very difficult to do this stuff. When I finish these shoots, like, it literally takes me a week, just a day. I have to have a complete recovery day where I just, like, wake up, I'll go work out, I'll eat a whole bunch of food, and then I'll just nap. And it takes me 1 day to get my brain to, like, it feels like blood's going back to my brain. It feels very bizarre when you finish these shoots. You're tired, you're exhausted, you're physically and mentally exhausted. it's a culmination of 3 months of just a lot of work. Like I've been working nonstop on this project for literally the last 3 months while we have another movie going off to distribution, and we're marketing another movie, which is Horror in the Forest. So there's a lot to do with this stuff, but the schedule, making a good schedule, working with the actors, doing as much pre-production as possible will put you in the best place to succeed. And, when you get on set, be flexible, keep the urgency and keep everyone moving forward. There's a tendency in the first couple of days to kind of be relaxed and go slow and take your time. And you really want to be able to, once you're on set and start that camera rolling, you want to keep the fast-paced intensity all the way through. It's very difficult to do this, but if you can do it, you'll be in a much better place, because you really do not want to be there on day 6 and day 7, falling behind on stuff. It's just not a good feeling to be rushing. It's very stressful, and you're not going to get a good product. So I think that's my advice. I mean, just to look back at Gone, we went on there, and our schedule, within the first 3 hours, we knew our schedule was bad. We knew the script was bad. We started throwing things out. We had a shot list, and we threw that out like immediately. So it just shows you, and we did a lot of pre-production on Gone because that was our first movie. We really did a lot of stuff. So even the most pre-production stuff, if you just don't have experience doing this stuff or working with people who have made a feature film, it's very difficult. But it's a learning process. And like, once again, it's a learning process. You get better with each one. With each one of these movies, they get much easier to shoot. The last 2 we did were very easy to shoot. We finished with plenty of time, or right on time. I know Ben got his Uber right as we finished it, but I never felt really stressed out on the last shoot. Horror in the Forest was very smooth. Knock on wood that this one's going to be very smooth as well. But I've also made 14 movies. So it's like, I know how to do this. We understand it. And it's like, not even just myself, it's the crew. Kel's done all of them too. Dylan's now on movie number 6, which I thought was pretty wild. He's almost done as many. We have the first 8, the Hateful Eight, and then we got the Dylan 8, coming up.
The Dirty Dylan.
The Dirty Dylan. So, everyone's experienced with this stuff. And I think once you get enough experience, we're starting to get better dialogue. We're starting to get better scenes. We're starting to get better products. I mean, Horror in the Forest, The Force of Death is certified Rotten Tomatoes. We had a big jump in the IMDb ratings. We're almost 1 point above any of our other movies, which is pretty solid. You get a 5 on IMDb for a horror movie. That's pretty solid. That's in good range. So I think, we're getting quality products out there. I think we just need to keep growing, but I think, another 5 movies and we'll be in really good shape. I think we can really get some really good, cool stuff out there. I'm hoping that Bigfoot's going to be another big jump. So we have like Horror in the Forest, and then the Roger Project, and this is the next big jump for us. Because the next 2 are going to be, once again, remakes of movies that we've done before. And usually when we do the remakes, it's another exponential jump.
Yep. So that's it. Again, it's really tough because it does come down to that experience. It's really hard to kind of pinpoint those things. But to any indie filmmaker listening out here, do your pre-production. There's no excuse for it. Be sure to take a look at our Discord channel online, because we make movies for our fans with our fans, so you can be part of our process, get even more inside access, be on set with us, and support indie film. Go ahead and watch yourself some Forest of Death, absolutely free on TV. But until then, have a good one.